Today's episode of The Watch is brought to you by Mack Weldon. With a smart design, premium fabrics, and a simple shopping experience, Mack Weldon underwear is definitely better than whatever you're currently wearing. Mack Weldon is the underwear of choice for The Watch, and it should be for Watch listeners. Nothing makes you more comfortable while watching prestige television than wearing Mack Weldon underwear. In addition to looking great and feeling great, all Mack Weldon products are crafted with natural fibers that have built-in performance capabilities, so they work hard too, even if you were just sitting on the couch. They even have a line of silver underwear and shirts that are naturally antimicrobial, which means that they eliminate odor. All that, and they are shipped right to your door, and if you don't like your first pair, you can keep it, and they will still refund you. No questions asked. Go to MackWeldon.com and get 20% off your first purchase using promo code WATCH. Get more comfortable while watching peak TV.
I need support staff to clear the room. Stand up and walk, now.
Hello and welcome to The Watch. My name is Chris Ryan. I am an editor at TheRinger.com, and joining me in the studio, his grayscale is looking better and better every day. It's Andy Greenwald!
What would it take, do you think, in your life to be having a medical procedure done to you, and it's not a nice one,
No.
for you to then turn towards the technician or completely unqualified intern, in the case of Game of Thrones, and give that manly nod? You know what I mean? Like go on.
I don't have it in me.
No, me either. I don't have that gear.
Andy, what a show for us today. We are part of the Ringer Podcast Network, the Ringer Podcast family, all of our favorite podcasts under one umbrella. So support, subscribe, go check those out, write iTunes reviews, do whatever you feel. Today we are talking about Game of Thrones, Season 7, Episode 2, Stormborn. And then we are also talking about some of the trailers that came out of the San Diego Comic Convention, one of my favorite conventions. We're talking a little bit, not enough, quite frankly, about Dunkirk. And then we are joined by Twin Peaks star of last night's Twin Peaks episode, in some ways, Matthew Lillard. Now, if you have not seen last night's episode of Twin Peaks, I recommend that you watch it for this interview. But I am going to go out on a limb and say this is one of the best hangs we've ever had on this podcast.
It was awesome.
Yeah. So
Matt Lillard is a prince. He is very, very forthcoming with us about his experience on Twin Peaks. He does a great David Lynch imitation.
His experience on The Perfect Score.
His experience on In the Name of the King, a dungeon siege tale. We get deep Wicker Park cuts, actors cuts.
It's just an awesome trip through his career, and he was just an incredibly
I would just say
personable, awesome guy.
And personal. I would say one of the best things about this conversation, and I hope you guys stick around for it, even if you haven't watched any of those things we talked about, is that it is a really revealing he's very revealing about what it's like to be a working actor.
Yeah.
And I feel like that is something that isn't talked about. Now, it's not like woe is me actors are coal miners.
No, but you don't
it's hard to be an
understand like
actor.
what the middle class actor is doing.
Yeah.
Yeah, right. All right, let's talk quickly about Thrones. Obviously, Andy and I appear weekly on Talk the Thrones with Mallory and Jason. So you can watch that on Twitter. You can watch the replay on twitter.com/ringer.
You can watch it right now. We've retweeted it.
We've RT'd that, John. Last night's episode was a pretty fun one, very chatty until the last 5 to 10 minutes when all hell broke loose on the seas.
Yeah, someone was saying this to me. It's just like, let's just think about the budget flexing of the show for a minute, where they have a globe-spanning, relatively talky 50-minute episode, longer than 55-minute episode. And then it's just like, oh, by the way, here's an 11-minute naval battle with flames falling from the sky.
So a lot of our takes you can just find in the Talk the Thrones thing. I don't want to belabor it. Obviously, I think the Prince Who Was Promised idea is like a pretty big one that's going to have a lot of impact on the rest of the season. A lot of these, and then there's I don't know, there's just a ton of stuff we could talk about, like Cersei and the Scorpion or whatever.
Well, there's the theme stuff, and there's the kind of interesting note that we didn't really talk about, just like, in the show has done this before, but specifically with these characters, like the course corrections that it does that are a little bit aggressive.
Yeah, what is one you wanted to talk
Dorne.
about?
Like Dorne is universally considered. I think Game of Thrones is rightly celebrated almost unanimously across the board. I think its missteps have been just shockingly few. I think the portrayal of sexuality and sexual violence has been a problem for a lot of people. There's been legitimate criticism made about it and the representation and handling of it. But also the handling of the Dorne plotline. Like generally, Jaime and Bronn's adventure in Dorne is considered a low point for the show narratively, right? Yeah. And the Sand Snakes in particular are as characters that just kind of didn't work on screen. And you can watch the show, and this is one of the reasons why they're brilliant, I think, is that they give people what they want. You know, it is...
Especially now that they're
off book.
Yeah.
But like the handling of the Sand Snakes, where it's just like, we'll bring them back to murder them. You know, because we are still mad about them, as happened last night. You know, I made the point on the show. It's like, considering the reduced number of players, you see what they're doing when they knock pawns off the board first. You know, they needed a battle early. They needed the good guys, quote unquote, to take some L's. So they took L's in the form of Dorne and the Greyjoys. You know, who have never been particularly popular characters. Did you see, by the way, in reading about the Sand Snakes thing today online? On Vanity Fair and Joanna Robinson's pieces. Did you see that Alexander Siddig, the guy who played Prince Doran, just like flipped a match behind him on the show and like watched it burn?
He wasn't into it?
He was real pissed that he got killed. Remember, he came back for one episode and was stabbed to death in the season premiere?
First episode of last season, right?
Yeah, which again felt like course correction.
And he was like, what's up with this?
He was like, if they wanted to kill me, why did they contract me for 4 episodes? He's like, this is ridiculous. My fans were excited to see me play this character. And I'm like, okay, slow down, Dr. Deep Space Nine. Like, I don't know if anyone was really that excited about it, but still, they are making decisions on the fly here.
Yeah.
They are responding.
The other thing that I realized when the battle started last night was that I was like, oh yeah, this is what it feels like when like action happens on this show. You know what I mean?
Because there hasn't been much.
And even the season finale of last year with the explosion in the Sept, that was a set piece, quote unquote, but one that was largely derived. The tension was derived out of cross-cutting, which you could do.
Yeah, the music.
Like you and I could not shoot that right now, but you and I could shoot it within a couple of different interiors. It's not anything on the scope of Battle of the Bastards or anything like that. So this naval battle, which was like, it was funny because it happened in the last few minutes of the episode, and we're just about to go on and do the
we were almost out the door.
And I was like, oh, damn. Like
this is happening.
That is that noise you heard on deck is actually going to be shown. I thought it was going to be like, oh, like
I thought it was going to
guys are partying or something like that.
I thought when she says
you're
on, I thought it was going to cut. Nope.
Yeah, they like to do it.
They deliver.
Anything else you wanted to take away from it? I find that like the we've talked about this a couple of times on the Twitter show. The idea of how information is being shared and how information is being manipulated and believed or disproved is fascinating. Your point last night about Cersei sitting on the throne and kind of stoking the xenophobic fears of some of the lords about like, look, you may hate me, but you can't want Dothraki wandering
that
the
never
countryside.
Works in the real world. That sort of thing. I had 2 other things before we move on to the other topics. One is I'm sort of realizing, and we heard even just as we were about to record, that some people were a little bit down on this episode. There's a lot of talking, a lot of, as we said on the show last night, a lot of the subtext being made text, like Varys and Daenerys talking it out, understanding the relationship between the Tarleys and the Reach and all this stuff. And this feels weird to say this as a barely recovered TV critic, but I do feel in a way the show is post-criticism because it is an experience. And obviously it's more so for us now because we are watching it and then going on a TV show to talk about it. It would probably be different if I had to sit down and write a recap like I used to. But I feel with this show now that we are on the part of the roller coaster where you put your hands up and you're just going down. You know what I mean? So all the talking just feels like it's part of this final crazy push. And let me rephrase. I don't think anything is, believe me, no one would ever accuse me of thinking things can be beyond criticism. That's not my brand. But, and I'm very big on brand building. But there is something about this where I'm like,
just wait for Andy's Dunkirk take. Tom Hardy is a quitter.
Tom Hardy should have had more in the tank. Do you know what I'm saying here? Like,
absolutely. I think that I would say that for me, I do think of this show as pre and post Red Wedding in terms of
that's a lot of post.
Yeah, but it stopped because I didn't read the books. My experience with the show is literally just the episodes up to the episodes that we've seen. The emotional sort of involvement that I had with the idea of like, I think just because I was actually like, oh, traditional storytelling tells me that this is going to be a story about the Stark family.
Right.
And Robb is important.
Oh, right. Before the show taught you what it was going to be.
Yeah. And even though Ned goes out so early, I think that you get focused on certain characters and you're like, well, the Game of Thrones is a story about this family, and eventually they'll get back into to good standing. And it's obviously not. And I think that the show right now, it's almost like watching an Olympic team where you've got like the sort of iconic characters
it's the final
who are
heat of the Olympics. You mean?
And the remaining characters are so iconic that they don't quite have the familial interlocking bonds anymore that you were used to in maybe the first few seasons.
Sansa and Jon and Arya and Sansa's.
Yeah, but they are also separated a lot of the time.
Yeah.
I mean, we're now just starting to see the Stark family coming back together, and even on the precipice of Arya returning to Winterfell, you've got Jon going south. So I mean, unless they bump into each other on the road,
nah, man, she's on the road, he's on the boat.
Yeah, that's right. So yeah, very interesting stuff.
Last thing about it. Just thinking about this after last night's show, you mentioned at the beginning this idea of, well, maybe there's more than one prince who is promised, It is interesting to suddenly see the endgame brought into focus and realize that it's been very easy to root for Daenerys and Jon Snow, as much as we root for anything on the show, but to be invested in their heroic journeys, only to suddenly realize now, and you could see this coming, this isn't a surprise, but to really, as a pure viewer of the show, be forced to realize the collision course that we're on, they might not both win. They might be at cross purposes. That would be truly radical. If Jason and Mallory were saying that Daenerys was acting a little Mad Queenie when she talked about potentially burning Varys alive. What if there's an epic heel turn coming? After people we love like Tyrion have pledged themselves to her that this felt inevitable. Jon saying he doesn't want to be king. What role are they to play still? We're headed towards traditional final battles. There's a boss battle coming, obviously, against the Night King, but what is a happy ending?
Yeah, it's kind of the same thing I was saying with the family stuff. I mean, we're taught very clear things, and George R. R. Martin has his version of subverting basically like these ideas about Prince Charming, etc. And then we are taught like things about like, well, yeah, obviously, but these two have to fall in love, and then they have to defeat this, and it's just like the likelihood that we're going to get through 8 seasons of this with that still intact is pretty slim.
I also want to say, because I might forget because there'll be so many more things happening next week. This thing that we talked about on the show briefly of paying things off. Generally, as a fan of TV and as a fan of the imperfect mechanism that is TV, I am against it. I am pro Pine Barrens on The Sopranos.
Yeah.
Loose ends can be loose ends. That's how life works. Art should work that way too. But it is really breathtaking to be watching a show for 7 seasons and then have the fact that in season 1, Jon Snow and Tyrion had a little moment be hugely relevant.
Yeah,
to survival,
the difference
to
between him
choices being
staying
made.
or going.
I mean, that's
yeah.
It was all one story. It was all connected. I mean, you shouldn't hold people to that standard in storytelling. I think it's damaging to the creator. It's damaging to the fan. But in this case, it's happening. Yeah. It's pretty exciting.
Let's end there with Game of Thrones and just talk quickly about some of these trailers that came out over the
Big
weekend.
week at Comic-Con. We didn't go.
We did not go.
We're waiting. Maybe we should have talked to Matt Lillard. We could have moderated a Scooby-Doo panel.
I think we should probably stick to the big ones, which I want to start with Stranger Things.
Me too.
Stranger Things. So obviously there has been some law change in music supervision where there was a time 10 years ago.
Yeah.
Well, there was a time 15 or 20 years ago when it was like bad form for a band to let their music be used in a commercial. That's obviously not the case anymore. Then there were things like in a Scorsese movie.
Yeah, then
you might hear the Stones.
The big expensive music thing.
But there were still these holdouts. Like you couldn't get Zeppelin, like to just get Zeppelin on their publisher on the phone was like cost you $20,000.
Also paying for it. It's both would they allow it and
I don't know what changed, but the fact that Stranger Things Season 2's first full trailer is soundtracked almost entirely by Thriller is wild to me, Dan.
Well,
also, just I'm still here just saying that I find this show like very, very enjoyable, and I'm actually quite excited for it to come back. I know that it's like Dragon's Lair, and Steve looks like Ferris Bueller even more now, and they're all dressed up like Goonies and stuff like that. Ghostbusters. But I'm excited. I don't know. I do find there's something inherently charming about this show.
Can I sidebar for a second? Just bond with you for a moment as 80s babies. Dragon's Lair is probably to date the single most frustrating experience of my life.
It's a garbage.
It was the biggest waste of pocket change in history.
Yeah.
So for people who don't know, and it's in the trailer, look, arcades were the shit. Like that was what you could do with your time, and that was the best thing to do. Like,
and they were also like a very like big bonding experience because there were all these multiplayer games like NBA Jam or X-Men or Street Fighter or whatever.
Remember Operation the one with the 2 submachine guns?
Yeah.
Like, this stuff was so fun. This was our childhood. And there was this one in the corner that looked really interesting because, you know, we thought like the Tron game had good graphics, quote unquote. Right. But like Dragon's Lair, Don Bluth, the animator, made an animated film, and we're like, oh my God, it's a living cartoon. And it costs 50 cents instead of a quarter.
I don't. It's at Spaceport. It costs like $1.25.
Damn.
You're wilding. Where'd you get 50-cent Dragon's Lair?
Probably like Wilkes-Barre, PA, when I was visiting my grandparents. Okay. A different economy scale up there. But you play this game, and the thing is, it was pure timing because it was literally a laser display.
No, there's nothing to do except the screen would flash, and you'd have to hit the buttons
or turn to the right or whatever at the exact moment, or you would die like they do in this trailer, and it would just happen. Did
you ever know anybody who like got really deep and like far into that game? I always died like at the very first
me too.
moment.
And I would always get tricked into it.
Yeah.
No, I mean, very frustrating, but a nice throwback.
So that's in there. Are you excited for the new season?
Let me say yes. We've gotten a long way from season 1. And in the aftermath of season 1, a couple things happened. One was I was very adamant being like, they should just make this an anthology show. You don't need to do a sequel. Yeah. Come on now. You did it once. Try something else. I think we all got a little kid fatigue. Like they were trotting the kids out like mascots at every award ceremony. They've been doing this lap. You know, they're nominated for this year's Emmy because of when the show came on. And also, as we've talked about, creators in Hollywood were pretty down on the show. So I think the narrative was a little bit of a backlash to the show. I watched this trailer. I'm with you. I'm in. It's really great.
Yeah.
Like it reminded me of something that I felt at the time and we talked about that I had forgotten, which was this show was extremely pleasurable to watch. It was really fun to have.
There's also like there's a lot of shows. There's a lot of and most of what you saw coming out of San Diego was either a sequel or deeper dive into pre-existing stuff. I was struck by how much I was like, I kind of want to know what happened with Mike like that ended like there was not a lot. There was resolution, quote unquote, to getting him back, but you don't really know like
Mike, but what's the kid's name? Will, yeah.
Will, sorry. Well, I want to know what's up with Will because this upside down is not very.
Also, that kid wants to go ISO.
Yeah.
He was off the board for the first season. He wants to show his chops.
Yeah, I know. He's got
those other kids got all the award show dap.
I know.
No, but it's not just that. It looks like the Duffer Brothers have taken advantage of the budget, not just in terms of soundtrack. It looks more polished, you know. And I think they've the things that they are in love with, they have the right things to be in love with. It seems to be very more horror, a little more Stephen King-y, and I love that here's let's make it simple. I love that they're calling it Stranger Things 2. They are embracing this idea that is really not done in TV, even though we talk about shows as 10-episode movies or whatever. They're making a sequel. So I like that. That's a different way to think about it, even though that seems very basic, and that makes a lot of sense to me.
So that's out in Halloween. Let's talk quickly about Westworld.
Westworld trailer. Yeah, I didn't even know they were filming it again. I thought they were just like taking a beat to really
I thought that
think
they were
about
like, we have to figure out what the hell happens next. But 2018, that was
it's
all
not
they
coming
said.
back till next year.
Answered the question that Luke Hemsworth character is still alive. I don't know if that was kind of up in the air.
And Ed Harris.
Is there. Jeffrey Wright is rolling deep on Team Human, it looks like.
Team Tiger.
Yeah, and Team Tiger. It doesn't really give any indication whether, like, what's happening, but it does suggest. I would say that the trailer feels like a little bit more fun, and if Westworld was a little self-serious, I think but the trailer is the trailer. So
people are so smart at cutting trailers for specific audiences. This is a Comic-Con trailer. I said recently, I think season 1, I think it was a bad show. I think that I've also said that I think there's a lot of opportunity to make a better show in another season, especially with time to think about it in a more streamlined production process, because the production of the first season was troubled, to say the least. That said, I don't really care about this. You know what I mean? Like the trailer, and this is pitched towards San Diego, so it's not really necessarily you can't judge it what the season's going to be. But there's just a lot of dead bodies and people getting shot, and the idea of these people getting shot again and again in their little dystopia. It's just not. That's not interesting to me.
Yeah.
But they find this endlessly fascinating. You know.
Yeah.
Show me a living tiger, Jonah Nolan. That's what I'm saying.
What else do you want to talk about? You want to Justice League? You want to talk Thor?
Justice League. How about Ready Player One was weird.
I am hoping that is just a bad teaser.
But
I saw a bunch of people who were like, "This sucks. Nothing from the book is in it," or there was some real like book heads, people who were big fans of the Ready Player One book by Ernest Cline were like, "That's not what I wanted." But
yeah.
I just don't like motion capture.
Me either.
And it's 60% motion capture. So
here's my other problem with it. The trailer. Well, okay, you talked about Thriller being used in the Stranger Things and how everything is kind of a mashup and potpourri of culture now and nostalgia and just hitting trigger points in ways that we didn't think were possible because of like brand sharing, which is now, world building. So this trailer is like Freddy Krueger is in it, right? And there's like the Bigfoot monster truck and it's this mashup of 80s culture all together as if this is somehow exciting for us, that we want to relive the games we played in the sandbox or whatever. The bummer to me is Spielberg is in this. Spielberg directed this. And the way he's in the trailer, he's introduced as cinematic game changer Steven Spielberg.
I guess that's sort of like because the Ready Player, it's like virtual reality games.
I
hope that's like the joke, not that.
But Stranger Things,
the guy
has other
directed
influences.
Munich. Like you can just say great filmmaker Steven Spielberg.
It's not just that. It's that everything that is fueling the nostalgia, he did. Or
he
George
took
Lucas
his stuff
did.
out of it, though, apparently.
Well, that's fine, but I'm not saying it's backwards looking. I'm just saying it's a bummer to me that he's just like rolling up his sleeves and being like, okay, this is what the kids want. They want retro cartoons. I can do that. When he was doing it the first time, it was forward looking.
Yeah.
This feels backward looking.
Well, the crazy thing is that, so this is coming out, and I don't know which one is first or second, but within 3 months, Ready Player One and The Papers are coming out at the same time. So
he's done that before. Actually, there was the year. Did Munich and
Minority Report and
Catch Me If You Can or Munich? He's done it. He's had a year where he had a fun movie and a serious movie.
Yeah,
I'm just happy the guy's working. Look,
Me too.
I mean,
yeah,
you have to see a Spielberg movie. Justice League for a second.
Sure, man. Let's rock it.
Feels weird, man.
Well, so today there was a report in, I think it was Variety, that they are spending $25 million on the Joss Whedon reshoots of this movie, which they said it was just for like punch up of dialogue and for, some connective tissue. But this now seems to be, what we do now, which is basically shoot a blockbuster, release some footage, do a test balloon, and then reshoot it, which is, so in that sense, it's hard to get too annoyed about. I could give a shit one way or the other.
Yep.
They could reshoot the entire thing. But the funniest part about all of this is that it is really affecting Henry Cavill's mustache that he wants to have for Mission Impossible.
That's your bigger concern?
That's in the fucking piece.
It is?
Yeah.
How about what it's doing to Affleck? Affleck's melting down in front of our eyes.
He's fine. He's like, I'm doubling down on Batman.
Sure.
Yeah.
Great. That's because Matt Reeves didn't want to make the movie with him, right? I feel like
I don't know.
That's the vibe I got. But
who should be
who cares?
Yeah.
Who cares? Here's the other thing about it. Wonder Woman completely changed the narrative for DC and Warner Brothers.
Yes.
It is the biggest movie of the year. It is beloved by many people. It has a positive, because Suicide Squad made money, but I don't know people who are like, that was the best movie of the year. That made me happier. It inspired my children. You know what I mean?
Can you imagine? The Suicide Squad kid is the kid in Twin Peaks who likes letting off shots in a minivan.
Yeah, he just like lick a shot and then like stares down Bobby Briggs.
He's like, everything I learned from Kinnaman.
That's incredible life advice. But Zack Snyder made a Zack Snyder movie, and then for truly sad reasons, I have nothing negative to say about him.
Yeah, absolutely.
He had to step away from this movie. But these things are living, these blockbusters, because of their importance to the bottom line, are living, breathing things. They will keep making this movie.
So the only reason I even brought
minute.
this, and the reason why I think this is actually fascinating is the economics of Hollywood are kind of mysterious to me in general. Just like the idea of Netflix spending so much money on content, but they have like a bottom line that they have like an idea about like we're spending money to make money essentially. And if you keep creating this thing where people can just like not watch TV and just live inside of Netflix and just have all these options, you don't have to worry about, you're just going to keep adding subscribers. What I think Warner's is doing here as a guess is they are almost literally trying to keep up with a real-time evolving conversation about superhero
Yes,
movies.
they are.
And they tried once to be like, okay, so Marvel's going bright, sunny,
Funny.
affirmative,
Yeah.
funny. We're going to go dark, gloomy, Dark Knight on steroids. That didn't work. Okay, so now we're going to course correct. We're going to course correct. Wait, people love Wonder Woman.
Mm-hmm.
Shit. We have this other movie coming out soon with Wonder Woman in it.
Mm-hmm. We're already filming it.
Yeah. Let's like what can we do? Okay, let's get Joss Whedon in here. Let's do and I know that obviously circumstances are what brought Joss Whedon in the first place, but it seems to me like they are trying to mold the movie around almost like
Yes.
the people watching debates who are like tapping on who they're going to vote
That's
for.
exactly what I think
but
they're
they're
doing.
spending so much money to do that.
Yeah.
So it's fascinating. I wonder, in 10 years, are we going to be, hey, we've got like all the actors who are going to play these parts, but we're basically like crowdsourcing how to make it.
That's what's weird. I mean, there's no way. I think the Avengers movies proved this. There's really no way for one of these team-up movies to be a quote-unquote great movie. What Whedon did was manage them, and they were fine. They were what they were. They accomplished what they needed to accomplish. They had the trailer scenes, and then they spun off into the next movies, right? And whether even an individual superhero movie can be quote-unquote great is another
do you
question.
remember a single thing that happened in Ultron?
No, they lifted up the city, and the city fell down.
Right.
Quicksilver went bye-bye. Yeah, I remember 3 things, buddy.
Yeah, sorry.
But this is this. They
Oh yeah,
need
Linda
this.
Cardellini farmhouse, right?
Oof. Yeah, thanks for bringing that back. Yeah, that happened. They need this movie to be successful for the next movies, so they need to keep throwing money at it. But the reshoots are definitely about making more of it about Wonder Woman, they should. But because that's what's working, there's no way this can be coherent, right? But my biggest takeaway is it looks like. It still looks like that.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? No matter how many like pithy one-liners they feed to Affleck, or no matter how psyched Momoa is air guitaring a trident in Hall H. Did you see that?
I did.
That's terrific.
I'm glad he's enjoying himself.
He should be enjoying himself. He's married to Lisa Bonet, and he's Aquaman.
This is actually a good jumping off point.
What did you do when you watched that Justice League trailer and they were like, Arthur Curry, the Aquaman? It's like, is that a thing that we're doing?
I would, we take for granted. I think that Andy and I talk a lot about these superhero films, and we're happy to engage with them. They are actually quite interesting in what they say about the industry and what they say about the stories that people are engaged with. But we have also been very critical of generally the way they look, right?
Yeah.
And sometimes you can kind of be like, well, that one was a little bit better, but it's they're not always that stimulating in terms of like the sort of basic filmmaking stuff going on there. That is not the case with Dunkirk. If you care about movies, you should see this movie.
In a big theater.
In a big theater. And I don't mean that in the like, you really should see Hateful Eight on the way that Quentin Tarantino meant for it to be seen. It's like you can watch Hateful Eight on a plane. It's fine. You should see it on a big screen, but don't worry about it. This movie is such a raw, visceral experience. Dunkirk is everything that spend $200 million on it.
Mm-hmm.
If that means making a film like this, like the largesse, like the IMAX cameras, I haven't been this like transported in such a long time. Where it's just from the second these billets come flying out of the sky, saying we have you surrounded, to the very last shot, which Christopher Nolan finally ended a movie well.
Mm-hmm.
You're just absolutely. It's like having somebody who's literally beating your heart with their own hand. Like everything that you are doing, you're in his hands. And you could make critiques about the timeline manipulation. I've had conversations with people who are like, well, I didn't like how there was any context. It's like, these guys didn't have context.
Right.
The guys on the beach did not have David McCullough like narrating their experience.
Also, stop fucking holding our hands.
Yeah.
Thank God.
Yeah.
Show us something.
Yeah.
Stop telling me. I don't need World War II origins.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? What more do you need to know than a guy is walking down a street, he needs to relieve himself, but people are shooting him?
Yeah.
Here we go.
Yeah.
Let's go.
And I can't wait to see it again, because I think that the film does so many incredible shots with point of view of somebody being on one part of the beach and not knowing what's happening on like 100 yards away. Like when those guys are first coming up and they're like, he's like, where are you going? And he's like, that boat. And he's like, yeah, that boat's beached. What are you doing? And he's like, no, because like when the tide comes in,
Mhm.
we're just going to float away,
Mhm.
which is idiotic.
Yeah.
But it's actually like, if I was stuck in that situation, I would be like, maybe I could become the Aquaman.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, like whatever.
I too can be the Aquaman.
I would be considering all possibilities.
Sure.
When Cillian Murphy's like, I am not going back.
You got to keep your head on a swivel, man.
Yeah, and it's just the performances, the cinematography is mind blowing. The way it makes you feel like you're drowning, or you're flying, or you're scared, or you're small, or you're huge. Just everything about it was just gorgeous.
I love this movie. I loved it. I loved going to see it. I had a great time seeing it. And people know I wasn't out here checking for a war movie. I wasn't out here checking even for the next Nolan movie.
Yeah.
Because I've soured on him a little bit. This, I think, is his best movie in a lot of ways because it solves the problem of his other movies. Now, I'm only using that language because this is a guy who I do, on some level, looks at cinema like problem solving. And there already are stakes. He doesn't have to worry about that. He doesn't have to worry about exposition, honestly, as you're saying. He has found a subject matter that is already sweeping and enormous and gripping. And then because of that, he was able to put some of his tricks onto it in terms of timeline, but in a way that I thought was incredibly respectful, incredibly gripping and interesting, purely from a structural level. And look, like I have never been a fan of, in any medium, of virtuosity. You know, I am not checking for Steve Vai records because he's the best guitarist in the world or whatever. I don't need someone just soloing.
Mm-hmm.
But this guy knows how to make movies and knows how to make them in a way that is primal. And I was all in on it for that reason. I watched this movie in those opening moments. You're talking about the little flyers falling from the sky, basically like you're dead, surrender. The sound of them, the footsteps, this town, the feeling of this is a place where life once existed, but it's not life anymore.
Yeah.
A feeling
The
that
cigarette butts in the ashtray.
A feeling that is continued when Mark Rylance is living in the real world and then takes a boat to hell.
Yeah.
This is an art film. I really felt like it was an art film. It was a work of art, of cinematic art. The film that really I felt like was very influential on it is There Will Be Blood in a lot of ways. I felt like this was him watching P.T. Anderson movies and being like, okay.
Yeah.
Again, maybe this is how he looks at things. That's a problem to be solved. How did he do something that epic and gripping and historical and human, but then also how can I make $400 million at the box office with it, which is what he's capable of doing this summer. First of all, who knew there were so many beautiful boys still in England to be cast in this movie? A lot of great looks, even under the oil.
And the performances are, I actually think, probably underrated. I thought Jack Lowden was really good as the other pilot with Tom Hardy.
I kept calling him Stuart Murdoch because I thought it was the lead singer of Belle and Sebastian. Great performance.
Rylance might be like top 5 dead or alive right now.
He's the greatest.
Yeah, and just that it's so he's got that combination of such like a lived-in character actor's face, but with that extra bit of I'm so good that I am the star.
Yeah, the charisma.
Yeah,
that he doesn't have to say.
And Tom Hardy will just wear masks and still just be like, I'm the best.
He spent one movie driving a car. This movie just in a plane.
This would be like Michael Phelps swimming with ankle weights on. Like I don't. Fury Road, Dark Knight Rises. This like he just wears shit on his face and he's still like, I could be James Bond if I tried.
How about the fact that we joked the other week about the expanded Dunkirk universe? This movie sets up the sequel beautifully.
I know, man. The Great Escape.
A hero of France. Tom Hardy, you can do this.
That's the last sequence is so incredible with the plane landing, but then he gets captured while he's watching the burning frame of the plane, but the plane is still hanging on there. I mean,
there's a thing that I can hear criticism of the movie, of course, and I do wonder. When I left the theater and the high went down a little bit, I was picking nits a little bit, and I've heard criticism that I understood or recognized. I don't know if I want to see it again, partly for this reason, because yes, it could be a problem to some people that you could reduce this movie to a series of scenes that sort of manipulate you into feeling one way, and then they build on top of each other in a way that is very flattering to the filmmaker who constructed them in a way.
Sure.
There's this problem to be solved. There's this, now they're in this predicament, then there's this predicament on top of each other. Sure. First of all, that's how all movies are made. That's narrative storytelling, right?
No, it's like if you wanted the Clint Eastwood version of this that was like 80 minutes long, and it was just Mark Rylance on a boat, I mean, who cares? Like, what? If you're gonna make it. Just go nuts.
The kid who gets hit by Cillian Murphy, like that whole thing, I'm not entirely sure about.
George,
the George subplot, first of all, great sweater vest. So he went out a hero.
Yeah.
But yeah, there are things to
Guys got dressed up to go to war.
Seriously,
Yeah.
they did.
They look better than I do going to work at a blog.
Look,
Yeah.
they make black dishwater tea and pieces of bread with jelly on it.
No,
look
I was
real
hungry.
good.
I was
Yeah.
like, that toast looks good, man.
I don't think it was toasted. I don't think they had time to toast.
Probably
what
not.
What are you, an officer?
I'm Branna.
It's an impressive achievement, and it made me feel great about the cinematic arts.
I love that Kenneth Branagh it's always in the round for him. He's just like, what's the line? It's like, it looks like home. He's like, gotcha. Let's just check this shit out. Looks like home.
How many days was he just on a pier to film this whole part of the
That's
movie?
it. He's like-
Did they wrap him in 2 days?
I know. Just like, Ken, we're going to have you go to the end of the pier today.
It's good stuff.
Okay, let's take a break. We'll hear from our sponsors, and we will be back with a great interview. Not great because of me and Andy, but great because of the subject with Matthew Lillard from
Always
Twin
great
Peaks.
because of you.
Today's episode of The Watch is brought to you by Hotel Tonight. If you are like me and you are not so great at planning ahead, I have got some news for you, and it's good news. There is this awesome app called Hotel Tonight that helps you find amazing hotel deals at the last minute. It sounds counterintuitive, but unlike flights, hotel rates actually get cheaper at the last minute. And Hotel Tonight helps hotels get rid of their unsold rooms by allowing them to pass these deals down to you. These aren't last resort places, though. They're actually really cool, top-rated hotels that you want to stay in. And with so many awesome partner hotels in a ton of different countries, Hotel Tonight can help you find a great hotel almost anywhere. It's perfect for a spontaneous getaway or finally going on that trip that you've been wanting to take for a while. I've used Hotel Tonight multiple times this summer. You know, when you get into the dog days and you're just like, I cannot do another weekend just standing in front of my air conditioner, just dial up Hotel Tonight. Pick a place. Live a little. Because even though the app's name is Hotel Tonight, you can actually book up to a week in advance. So if you're just like on a Tuesday and you're like, let's get out of here on Saturday, you're all good. All it takes is 10 seconds, just 3 taps and a swipe. So get in on these killer last minute deals and download the Hotel Tonight app now. Today's episode of The Watch is brought to you by Spotify. Did you know that you can listen to The Watch and other pods from the Ringer family on Spotify? Yes! The streaming service that you know and love for music is also fully loaded with podcasts. Find us in the podcast section within the Browse tab when you're using Spotify on mobile, or just search for The Watch in Spotify. And, you know, while you're searching for things, feel free to dial up Chris Ryan 77 or Andy Greenwald as user profiles. We've got tons of playlists that we've made over the year or so that we've been doing The Watch for Spotify playlists that are just bangers. Baranski Barbecue. We have our 97 music playlist is still up there.
What about Fishtown Connect?
Fishtown Connect, that was an old classic. So while you're there, click to follow us to have our new episodes delivered right into your Spotify library. Head to spotify.com/podcast for more. That's spotify.com/podcasts.
We are joined right now in the studio by star of Twin Peaks.
Star is not the
one
right
of the
word.
stars of Twin Peaks.
The guy who's one of 279,000 people.
But one of the more memorable ones. And star of my heart,
Yeah.
Matthew Lillard.
Huzzah!
Thank you for joining us.
R.I.P., man.
R.I.P.
Yeah. You went out.
Spoiler alert.
I feel like if people have gotten to this point in the podcast and they know you're on, they're caught up. But we'll put a spoiler alert in the beginning.
Also,
Okay,
I
good.
feel like events on Twin Peaks The Return, it's kind of spoiler proof, right? Because it's like there's the cherry pie in the box.
Yeah.
Your character lost his skull because a interdimensional
Homeless man.
homeless guy
Yeah.
came in
Yeah.
and crushed it.
That's
So, you know, it's context is
it
everything
is
of the show.
context.
So we want to talk to you about, obviously, your performance in Twin Peaks and your role in Twin Peaks, the show in general. I want to do deep dive into The Bridge, which, as you
I will
know,
go deep and hard.
you
as
know that's
want.
my show.
That is that's your jam.
But I feel like we should begin by talking about Comic-Con because you just came back. You
Yeah.
and a bunch of the cast did a panel.
A weird collection of the cast.
A very, please,
You're-
a very
yeah,
interesting
I mean,
sampling.
all of them, unbelievable. And, you know, I didn't know any of them, have never met
Yeah.
any of them because I never worked with
Right, you didn't do
with
scenes
them.
with any of
yes.
these people. So
And
this
you're
is-
like, all of a sudden you're a cast, and you look at the Game of Thrones cast, and it's like they're celebrating being together because
Yeah,
they're
right.
like dear friends. And I'm
Right.
like, Naomi, hi, I'm Matt. And she hasn't seen the show, so she's like,
She's not even watching
she's
it?
not watching. I mean, she's traveling.
Actors,
she
man.
hasn't been able to do. Neither's Tim Roth. So the two of them are like, I'm like, I'm on the show.
Yeah, they're
it's
like,
super. It's super
You
awkward.
may know me from such films as Twin Peaks, The
Yes,
Return.
it's
Yeah.
so crazy.
And so it's Kyle, Naomi, Tim Roth, and then who else
Good.
was there?
Everett was there.
Everett McGill was there.
Yes.
Big Ed.
Kimmy was there.
Lucy.
who is great, and then
The guy who played Bushnell was there too, right? The guy who plays Dougie's boss.
Yes, no, that's Dawn. Yeah, Dawn was there, who used to
Madeline
work
Budd.
with Marilyn Monroe.
Oh, wow.
Who was doing push-ups last night on the show, which I thought was amazing.
Yes, it was.
Yeah, and it was a crazy collection of people.
So you have these interactions with the fans. Like, are they mostly deeply appreciative? Do they have questions for you about like the inner meanings of the show? Like, what's
so I walked on. So Hall H has a lineup that goes for.
Yeah.
for
This
for
is the
days.
major hall where they like, you guys are in there, and then Justice League is in there, and then like it's the biggest.
So it was Game of
spot.
Thrones right before us, and like, and two before them was Walking Dead.
This is much like my viewing patterns last night. Game of
I
Thrones
mean,
and then
it's-
Twin Peaks.
It's crazy. But so the night before, like not midnight, like 11 o'clock, I walked up and down the Hall H line to say thank you to everyone for waiting in line.
That's nice.
And in that line, you have the sort of voracious fans.
Oh, because people don't give up their seat, right?
Right.
They're like-
Yeah. You were
they're
there
lined up.
all day.
Chris
So-
and I are big Comic-Con guys.
Well, you have Tuesday. So somebody was there Tuesday morning.
Oh my
The
god.
first people in
For
line
Twin
for
Peaks?
Hall H. Well, you're there all day, so you're like
You're there.
kind of. But they were there for Twin Peaks, so they lined up first on Tuesday afternoon for Twin Peaks.
So you have to really be. I thought I was a Twin Peaks super fan, but to really be one, I have to be unemployed.
Yeah,
That's the real
or have suspect employment.
suspect employment.
Yeah.
You have to have a side hustle.
You have to be in the game,
Right.
Like
So were they? What was the interaction like?
So they asked a lot of questions. I mean, somebody introduced themselves as a Twin Peaks scholar, which I was like, wow.
I apologize for that.
Yeah.
This morning. I
But
didn't
he
mean
was
to.
like, I said, can you explain episode 8? And he was like, absolutely.
Yeah.
With like
100%.
100% assurance. I was like, wow. So there are people out there like you. Look, I think the fan base it's a little like being a part of Star Wars.
Yeah.
Mhm.
I mean, you have this fan base that is religious. I mean, they are voracious consumers of that world and David Lynch and all things Twin Peaks.
And it's the same thing. We've been finding this with Thrones too, where it's like it's not only like the thing that you're watching on Sunday nights. People have been thinking about this for 20 years. They
Yes.
have
25 years.
25 years. They have their
Yes.
own theories. They have their own imaginations, and there's all this like ephemera that's surrounding the show
Yeah.
that they're obsessed with. I was curious about. I mean, obviously, last night was a huge episode for you,
And the last.
and the last.
Although you
episode-
never know.
Yeah, right.
Don't tell us, but you
I
know,
mean,
it's
I
possible.
won't say anything,
Right.
but it was a moment where it hurt.
Yeah.
There
Yeah.
was a definitive moment.
There was
in the
definitely
life
a
of Bill.
definition. In
Well,
the
we can talk about it
character's
in
journey.
detail. Did you get to keep the head?
No, I did not get to keep the head.
Was there like a prosthetic? Like
Oh, there
that-
was, yeah. But the crazy thing is that they had in post removed the top because it was like there was like they removed it in post.
Oh,
Okay.
so you were
So
surprised.
they
when you
made
saw
it even worse. Yeah. Because it was like disgusting, and then they made it really
So
disgusting.
you've been watching it. I think people need to know this. Unlike Tim Roth, you've been watching the
Yes,
show,
I have.
and and you're learning as you go because I think everyone. This isn't a secret that David Lynch filmed an enormous amount of stuff, and then
Yeah.
he's putting it together.
Yeah.
So you didn't know when you would be in an episode or how it would play out.
No,
right?
I
So
didn't
you're-
know I was in episode 1 and 2. I
Oh,
mean,
so
at
you-
the premiere, my wife's like, "Are you in this?" I'm like, "No, I'm not until like episode 12."
But one thing you do.
I was like, and then there's the president of
Yeah.
Showtime going, "You're amazing in tonight's show." I was like, "What are you talking about?" And then I thought for sure I would be. I went 1, 2. I was like, "Well, for sure I'm in episode 3 where I get my head
Yeah.
blown." I mean, it's got to be bam, bam, bam. And then you don't.
You took a month
appear
and a half
again
off.
Yes, until episode 9.
But when you saw the scenes playing out last night, you knew what the scene was because you were
Yeah.
there. Are you watching it with your wife or anyone? Are you nudging them, being like, "Buckle up"? Or are you excited?
Well,
What is your
knew
experience?
they had screened it down in San Diego.
Oh,
So
okay.
I was informed after that indeed
You get your gold watch, you've done your time in
it
the-
was-
You've obviously worked on so much different stuff, but one of the things that's kind of cool about, especially the sequence that brings your character to some degree of finality, is it features the kind of, I would say, very Lynchian special effects. Like obviously he's staring up at this
vortex.
Yes.
There's like the electricity
The
currents
sound
going.
design, which is incredible.
Yeah, we've got like the. Can you tell us a little bit, without giving obviously any state secrets away, what his practical effects shooting style is like when you're on the set?
Also, he's in the scene.
Yeah, and
which
he's
is
in the
unbelievable.
scene, right? He's directing himself to some extent.
Yeah. He's but you have to understand. The only reason I saw any aspect of that was because David does this thing where anytime someone raps on the show, whether you're number 1 on the call sheet or number 58, for that day, even if you work for one day, he brings you to set and everyone gives you a standing ovation.
That's nice.
Like a hearty, heartfelt standing ovation. It's not like oh, hey, good work, now we move on.
Yeah.
It's like people come around and celebrate your work.
That's
nice.
Which
Wild.
is crazy. So the only reason I even knew David was in the scene, that day he had put on his suit. So I was like, oh, he's in the scene.
Yeah.
He's usually wearing like full Lululemon on the set. Otherwise,
Athleisure.
That'd be amazing.
Yeah.
He's just in a Speedo.
Yeah.
He directs in a Speedo. Nobody knows that. But they brought me to set for my farewell for that scene,
So you
for
saw.
that episode. So then,
Where did you film that scenes?
Van Nuys, I think.
I was in California.
That scene was in Van Nuys. All my stuff's in California.
Okay, so
But you see him,
Yeah.
like just shaking. And then he's like, "Oh, that's good." I mean, it's like, he's kind of taking care of it himself.
yeah,
He's
I got it.
"All
He's
right,
like, boy,
move
I nailed
on."
that. Yeah.
Let's rewind the tape a little bit. I'm getting the vibe from our interactions that you were not like me, an obsessive making your own fanzine in the middle school computer lab Twin Peaks fan.
No way.
Oh,
Is
yes.
that true story?
Oh, yes.
Do you still have it?
I have a large amount of my collection of stuff
Oh, my
and a
God.
picture of me wearing a trench coat.
So where's
with
the
a coffee
fanzine
cup.
though?
I think I did find copies, but then when we moved, I think it's in storage. But
Yeah.
I made this thing like what is it called? Like dot matrix printer.
Sure, yeah, of course.
Twin Peaks Gazette, and I ran like a ticker on the side,
Oh.
inspired by USA Today, where I like scoured the pages of Premiere magazine. No, in that style, because this is 1990.
I just imagining you like looking at USA Today and being like, "This is great."
This is what
I was
I'm
like,
gonna
King's
copy.
things is what I want to do.
This is cutting edge.
But what you had to do then is like I would read in Premiere magazine, James Marshall will be taking time off from Twin Peaks to star in a fighting film called Gladiator. And I was like, oh, this is gold. And I like wrote it in my journal for 10
for the
people.
world to see.
That's amazing.
I'm going to stop you on the world.
For
so
the junior high school.
The
to read.
takeaway from this is that USA Today is a very inspiring publication. But the second takeaway is I was super into the show.
Yeah.
I don't know if you were. And so can you talk to us about
No.
how you came into this
Dude,
world?
I don't.
Because you're
I'm
not in
still
the Lynch.
I'm still not in the world. I'm still not. So I have not seen the first iteration of the show at
That's
all.
amazing.
And I could actually. It's not. I don't really care because if somebody had given me something to build on,
Yeah.
if anyone had told you anything, and said that your characters based on the events in these
Right.
first episodes, I would have gone back and watched.
Yeah.
There is nothing that connects you to anything.
Disagree. Having seen it, but for your work.
He doesn't tell you anything.
Right.
There is nothing he gives you
Well,
other than the pages that you have words on. So in the interrogation scene, episode 9.
Which was just incredible.
Thank you
Beautiful
very much.
work.
Super, super proud of that moment. I'm happy it happened. But the scene where they're on the other side of the glass, that's redacted from my script.
No shit.
So I don't even in that moment,
Wow.
it completely had no idea that David Lynch was in my scene. Had no idea that Laura Dern was in the scene or that
Miguel Ferrer.
Miguel, yeah.
Miguel was there.
And you had no knowledge of who Major Briggs is.
No
in
idea.
The canon. Why it matters.
Like when somebody told me last night that the guy I circled was the guy from the original
who's
show.
passed away, who's being folded into the show through your character's
No idea.
plot line.
No idea.
Is that a secrecy thing, or is that like your character should know? Like, what's the motivation in terms of?
I don't know.
like-
It's a good question. I think that David Lynch, I honestly think that the way he sees filmmaking, and this is me, just my hypothesis, that I think that he just wants pieces that he can move as he sees fit.
Okay.
And the more you know, and the more you're connected, or the more, like, he just doesn't really care about that. He just wants these operational figures to operate what he needs you to operate.
Yeah, that's what when they said that's what Hitchcock was like. That the thing is in his head, and you just have to kind of like.
You just go, and,
Yeah.
and you literally hit the mark. And I mean, I'll never forget. I never met David Lynch. I
Yeah.
showed up to work the first day, and I'm like,
You,
hey,
you nervous?
not really.
Yeah.
And I think that that's good because I don't think. I mean, I kind of looked at David Lynch. I'm like, I'm not a tiptoe dude.
Yeah.
We're good. no matter, I think he's a great filmmaker. I think he's an auteur. I think he's kind of cuckoo bananas. And I kind of like the fact of calling him a little bit on his bananas. Like, I think he's hilarious.
Yeah.
So I walked up and said, hey, I'm Matt Lillard. He's like, hi, Bill Hastings. I'm like, oh, okay, that's how we're doing it. I had no idea.
Method directing.
Because he's like, hey, nice to meet you, Bill. And I'm like, oh, no. And I thought he thought I was somebody else.
Yeah.
I'm like, oh, no. So I'm Matt Lillard. I play Bill. Oh, Bill Hastings. Okay, yeah, now we know where we're at. But we had this moment where, like, I was like, okay, I'm gonna.
And so
like,
you didn't meet him till you were on set.
No.
The casting process. Were you told what it's for? You do a reading, or you just get
I knew it
selected?
was for. I mean, it was very secret. I knew that I was meeting for Twin Peaks.
But it wasn't an audition, or it was?
No, you sit in a room, and the casting directors, who are two lovely ladies, were like, hey,
who get top billing on the show. I think
yeah,
that's very
which is
interesting.
kind of crazy, which is amazing. And then it's like, Mark Frost, David Lynch, David Lynch.
Everything else,
Yeah. But as you sit in the room, like, they're like, hey, how are your kids? I'm like, oh, my kids are great. And they pull out a camera. And
I see.
They're talking to you.
Seems very natural.
Yeah. As they're just like shooting you as they're talking about the weather.
So this process obviously is, I mean, it could be alienating for some people to have that. But like, it sounds like he is, like, with the standing ovation thing, such a genial, gentlemanly,
He's
like,
lovely.
Does that compensate for like any of the, like, I'm not really sure, like, because if you're acting in literally a box and you can't see outside of it, I'm sure that that must be difficult.
It's kind of liberating,
really,
to be honest. I mean, look, I think personally, you're disavowing 4 of the 5 senses.
Yeah.
Like if I know where I'm at in a scene, I know what you want. I have the art. I mean, I have these preconceived notions. He's removing all of that.
Mm-hmm.
So there is a liberating aspect of it where you just hit your mark and you're like, dude, I better be good. And if it's not what you want, then you better tell me. I mean, the first scene in like in the jail cell, I was like, that's super arched. Is this where we're going?
Yeah.
He's like, you're great, Bill. Don't worry, let's move on. I mean, he's like sort of crazy. He sits there and smokes and like he like talks to you and
Does he shoot fast?
Oh, you're lightning. And you have 2 takes. Now look, I think if you needed more takes, you would take more takes.
Yeah.
But if he gets what he wants, you're moving.
When did you film it? When was this actually?
A year ago.
It was a year
About
ago.
a year ago.
And the scene, episode 9
Sure,
scene.
yeah.
When you started work on the show, on this arc, were you given all the pages of your character?
Yes.
So you knew that you had that coming?
You're reading the script, you're like, means boring. Like, you're just like another guy, and you get to that scene, you're like, oh, Christ.
So how, you have the tools to do this scene. Obviously,
you think you
played
do.
it off, but
You hope you do. I mean, look, in my craft, in my job, in what I believe is what I've spent my entire life to train to do, you hope you have it. But, you have days that doesn't show up like that.
Sure.
Mm-hmm.
Did like all the stuff with the guy's blog, all the backstory stuff that kind of comes out through the interrogation? Does that, are you
Completely irrelevant.
irrelevant?
Because there's also like, at that time, there was no access to anything. You're in a void.
Yeah.
So in fact, I went to Mark Frost and I was like, I need you to explain what's happening. He's like, I can't. I'm like, no, but I literally don't know what I'm saying. Like none of it makes any sense. Like you have to at least explain to me what I'm talking about.
Yeah. And?
And he did. He's like, oh yeah, okay, I'll give you that.
Okay, that's good.
But I will say that
good.
scene on the way, it's funny, on the way to work, I was like, and it never really occurs to me, but in this moment it did. I was like, oh, a bunch of people are going to see this.
Yeah.
And I'm going to either be good or I'm going to be really bad.
Yeah.
You were really good.
You're really good.
And one of the things that I love about this it feels weird calling it a new season. It's a new thing.
Right.
And the return it's well named because you're talking about how you didn't feel or the need to have a connection with the original series. It's kind of beautifully done because I'm sure I'm not the first person to say this. Leland Palmer character in the original series, Laura's father's character, has some similar emotional beats and moments.
Right.
Someone who deeply believes himself to be a good person, having a moment of just the rawest emotion possible of realizing that maybe there was a darker place.
Yeah.
He went to a darker place, that something was there. And so it's nice in a way knowing you didn't see that, you weren't echoing
Yeah, I'm
it.
curious to go back and look at it now. Yeah.
But there's similar feelings, and that's sort of what the show is doing too, in a completely new, I would say radically new way.
Right.
Are you enjoying watching the show now? It's complicated because you're in it too.
I am, but I've been in other things and never watched it. I mean, God knows I didn't watch State of Affairs. I mean, bless it, but
like if Descendants is on cable, do you watch it? Like to
no. And but, I mean, I love Descendants.
Yeah.
I think Descendants is an actual masterpiece.
I actually, we've been talking a lot around our office about like strangely rewatchable movies where it's like a movie that even though it's got like this darkness to it, like it's just like there's a part of it that is so entertaining and compulsive to watch that. And Descendants is weirdly like every time it's on cable, I'm like, I'm gonna watch 30 minutes of Descendants.
He's an incredible filmmaker.
Yeah.
And I think he made an amazing movie that lost to a silent film.
Yeah.
I mean, it's, you're like, wait, what? What is that? Really? But I watched the show. I find it oddly alluring. I really find it frustrating at times. And I'm like, I don't know why people love it as much as they do, but yet I am drawn to watch it continually.
Yeah, there's something in there that is alive.
Yes, you're like, what is episode 9? It drives me, or episode 8 drives me crazy. Like, who
evil.
does that?
Right.
And yet I didn't fast forward it.
Yeah.
I watched the whole damn thing. I talk about it multiple times. So he has something that gets under your skin that, I wish he cut it out fast. Sometimes I'm like, why is he on this shot? And like, it drives me bananas.
We just had this conversation last week where I think we were talking mostly about the Dougie stuff. And I was like, I like sometimes it's just, we could jump ahead a little bit. And Andy was like, I think that there's a degree, there are certain fans that are just like, it is what it is because it's what he's making. And in that sense, it has to be exactly what he wants. And I go with that. I mean,
and I do think that he is, I think that there is, because sometimes I'm like, is this as layered as everyone believes? And my confirmation is it's more layered than you even know.
What makes you say that?
Conversations outside the box.
Yeah.
Conversations with some people.
The guy waiting in line.
No, not that guy.
That guy explained it to you. Now you're like,
Dr. Twin Peaks of the San Diego community.
No, but
good. A crazy guy in line told me.
No, but it's it's even more layered than we think, and part of that is super complicated to track. Part of that has been like,
how was the vibe?
I hope it doesn't get deeper than 8 because I don't know if my mind can actually process that. Like it's gonna be like, what?
It's possible.
Yeah.
I will say too, it's built to be one movie. It's not built to be broken up.
Although it's broken up in a very interesting way. It's kind of compelling to dip in and out week to week, I find. And then he's crafted this alternative way to put together a TV show where there's a musical performance almost every week, and I'm starting to get used to the rhythms of it now. I mean, we've had 11 weeks to do it, but it's exciting.
Can I say, I also think that the intro loads you into that space in such an incredible way. It's super alluring.
Even the Rancho.
Makes me happy.
You load in. It's great.
Was the vibe among the cast who you hadn't met before?
Sure.
Everyone feeling good, like celebratory?
They all love it.
This and
they're
fun?
all in. I mean, I think that the cast that's back is over the moon to be back.
Sure, yeah.
Dana is like, I think he's couldn't be happy. I mean, all of them couldn't be happier. And Kyle is like sort of this, and I never met Kyle.
Yeah.
I'm like, hi,
He's
I'm
a very
Matt.
nice
And
guy.
like in Comic-Con, like on the 4th interview, I finally got around to introduce myself. But he's kind of like a perfect number 1 on the call sheet.
Yeah.
There's a generosity. You're talking about David Lynch as someone who leads these, the standing ovations for everyone. But one of the things I'm struck by in the show as someone who's had a quarter-century relationship with it is the generosity towards the cast members. Dana Ashbrook gets this opportunity, and Lynch and Frost gave him these beautiful scenes, emotional scenes, and now he can be a father and do something different. And the gentleness where he treats, the character that you saw, the Major Briggs character, Don S. Davis, died quite some time ago, but he's being given the send-off. He's being treated with respect. There's a kindness to the whole thing, which is always so interesting and incongruous because the show has such cruelty to it.
Yeah.
Or the world of the show. The show itself is actually kind of I don't want to say optimistic, but it's humanist in a way.
Yeah.
It's a sweetness to it. I could talk about Twin Peaks all day. I did want to expand the.
Yeah, sure.
A little bit.
We can satisfy your every desire if you want.
Well, I also don't want to know too much.
But the crazy thing is you don't know. I don't know anything.
Yeah.
Nobody knows anything except for Kyle.
So
Nobody knows anything.
I wanted to talk specifically about how for a lot of moviegoers, they know you very well from a number of roles earlier in your career, right? And even when I told people who were coming in, there were people who were like, Scream, I love Scream. Or someone was like, I watch Wicker Park all the time.
I had a Wicker Park this morning. Somebody's just like, holy shit, ask him about Wicker Park.
Yeah, so people love you in these specific roles. So they know Scooby-Doo.
You know, so many of these movies are terrible. Like, if you watch, like, people are like, 13 Ghosts is amazing. I'm like, nope, it's not. It is not.
The Dream Shatterer.
Dude, I mean, it's like, but like, you know, it's so funny. Like, Hackers is a movie.
Hackers
is a movie.
Hackers is a movie.
I
Stop
go
there.
to Seattle right now.
Yeah.
It's like me and then Ichiro in terms of like who's more famous. It's crazy that movie was sort of irrelevant when it came out.
Yeah.
And like 10 years later, I'll walk into an Apple store and I'm bigger than Bill Gates.
Yeah.
I mean, it's you're a serial killer.
20-something-year-old yous on the set of Hackers.
Yeah.
Johnny Lee Miller, Angelina, all these people. You're wearing
Amazing.
very accurate
You're probably like,
clothing.
this internet thing is never going to happen.
You know, you're
I'm
really
wearing rollerblades.
you're wearing rollerblades just
Rollerblades.
because. What are you thinking in that moment? Are you like, I've made it, or you're like, this is silly?
I wonder if they'll hire me back at
For Hackers
Geronimo's
too?
Bomba Bay Cafe.
Yeah.
No, I mean, look, I am not, for better or for worse, I am super happy. I am not the person on set that goes, this sucks. I'm on the person on set going, this is amazing.
Yeah,
that's great.
I mean, In the Name of the King to me is still, I mean, it's literally like the 13th worst movie ever made. Uwe Boll made the 13th worst movie in the history of filmmaking. And I was on set going, I love it.
What do you love about it? What is it?
Oh, well, first of all, Uwe Boll is the best.
Okay, so
Like,
is what they say. He is like
people love him, and he is great.
Yeah.
And if he hears this, he'll be like, oh, Lillard, fuck you. He'll be so angry that I'm slagging off his movie. But look, I mean, I got to run
clear,
around.
this is In the Name of a King, a dungeon
Siege tale.
Yeah,
Yes.
man.
Give it the respect it
Yes,
deserves.
you're
the full
right.
title.
Absolutely.
Okay.
I'll never. By the way, at the read through, it was like a 220-page script.
Awesome.
I'm like, when are we getting cuts? And the first day, he's like, no, he's going to try to make a trilogy. I'm like, I think you have to pay me for all three. I don't think you can shoot 225 and then make it one movie. Like, I'm calling a union.
Yeah.
Like, you can't do that. But that's Uwe Boll. I mean, like, he's
For people who
great.
don't know, can I read the cast of this movie? Because it's incredible.
By the way, that's why I took the job.
Jason Statham, Lily Sobieski, John Rhys Davies, Ron Perlman, Ray Liotta, Burt Reynolds, and our man Matt Lillard right here.
Incredible.
Yeah, this is.
I would go to a dinner party
Yeah,
with
yeah.
that, let alone get paid to be in a movie.
That's my
Oh, yeah.
second favorite Lillard cast, though,
That's your
What's
second
the first favorite?
because Perfect Score has Darius Miles in it.
You are officially the first person to ever say anything about Perfect Score in any capacity.
That has an insane cast. It's
That has an insane
Scarlett
cast.
Johansson, Chris Evans, Lillard, and Darius Miles.
Yeah,
Wow.
and
The Big Four.
Yeah.
Erica Christensen.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like, it's an incredible cast.
Yeah.
That were like these. I have a great story about that. There was I was friends with Brian who directed it, and I came up and did this little part. And he's like, "Hey, could you just talk to the cast?" I'm like, "Why?" He's like, "Well, they're going out until like 4 a.m, and they're partying like every single night, and they're getting to work, and they're not waking up until like 2." I was like, "Okay." So I called Chris Evans. He played my brother.
Yeah.
Sweetest guy in the world, and actually an incredibly talented actor for a guy with such great abs.
Yeah.
Super talented.
It's frustrating, right? We
It's
feel that way
really
about.
aggravating.
That's
He's
how
got-
we feel about David Benioff, who's like writes Game of Thrones and also is
Oh, yeah,
tall,
yeah.
handsome, and married to Amanda Peet.
Oh,
It's like,
no.
just pick one. You know?
You're a jerk.
Yeah, it's the worst. And he's
Anyways,
nice.
I called him and I said, "Hey," and on the phone is his hotel room. I'm like, "Hey, this is Matt. I'm leaving. Listen, do great work. You're too handsome to be a character actor. You need to in these moments rise up and excel.
Yeah.
And do stupid things later. But like, dude, come on, man.
Do you
Bring
think
your
he
game."
looked up at the hotel mirror and was like, I'm Captain America.
Well, I think
So like it was like the sliding doors moment. If you hadn't done that, he was just like, I'll just be
Whatever.
Bucky or whatever.
cut to he's stealing my parts.
Yeah.
Forever.
But he's I was like, it's time. Like, you got to focus.
Yeah.
And he did. Well, the reason I brought up those movies was not just to say those names in that order because it's incredible or to get Captain America dirt, but because one of the most exciting things is the last few years to see you show up in The Descendants, to see you show up on The Bridge and *Halt and Catch Fire*, and now Twin Peaks. And these are very different parts, and you're still acting the hell out of them. Is this a conscious... Well, what's that like for you, basically, to go from being known for a certain type of movie and then taking these jobs, getting these jobs, still working, and having different opportunities? A lot of them, ones I'm mentioning, other than The Descendants, are on TV.
Yeah. Look, it's a long and hard road. Any working class blue collar actor has a long journey, and it is not always pretty, and sometimes it sucks. And I tell this story all the time to kids I teach. I had a moment sometime right before I turned 40.
He looks at me, not Chris, because he knows I'm already over the threshold.
But we were just talking about the impact of turning 40 earlier. But I had this moment where somebody called me to asked if I was interested in Dancing with the Stars. And I had this moment where I had done big movies and I had been the lead in Scooby-Doo, playing Shaggy, the lead. I got paid a lot of money. It was a huge success. And I was like, oh, I'm set. I'm going to now sort of control my own destiny. I'm a legit Hollywood sort of success, which was the farthest thing from the truth, because I had really kind of pigeonholed myself to be this kind of, in a movie that nobody respected and nobody really liked. And I was kind of like, people sort of thought me as a hack at that time. At least I felt that way. And I wasn't getting offers and I wasn't getting jobs. And so at the time I was with the biggest agent, the biggest manager. And so I would call my agent and say, hey, I need a job. And I would get a job, and the job was worth X amount of dollars. And it was great. But I was living this lifestyle where I'm going to make money. We had a big house and we had private schools and fast cars. And we were kind of bloated. We were living on hype, and I wasn't making the money. And I would get a job, but then I would get another job like 6 months later that was for less money and this declining scale. I was like, well, I'll always be able to go back to TV. Well, I did a pilot and it didn't get picked up, and did another pilot, didn't get picked up, and so I'm on this sort of spiral down. And
is it like early 2000s? Like, when are these pilots?
Early? No, it's long. It's after that.
Like 7-8 years ago.
Yeah, 7-8 years ago. I'm 47, so it was like 7 years ago. It was like right before I turned 40. And, and look, I was in a weird place. I wasn't the kid I was in Scream. I wasn't a star. I wasn't big enough to open a box, and that was like foreign sales were big. And a long story short, along comes this offer where I can make a lot of money. And people looked at me like, you should do it. And I turned to my wife and I said, we are living on ego. It was like this come to Jesus moment where I was like, I'm not what I think I am. I'm not special. I'm not a star. I'm not, I'm all these things that I'm not. And the more I sort of sell out, the less value I have in who I am. And my dream coming up was to be a great actor. If I take Dancing with the Stars, I'm never coming back. And so on 3 consecutive phone calls, I fired my agent who I loved, my manager who I loved even more, spoke at my wedding, and my lawyer. And I'm like, I have to just change my life. We sold our house, we got rid of our cars, and we downsized our life to a point where we could manage. And I went back to take jobs that were built on work. And look, that's a hard thing. I mean, when you don't work for a long time and you finally do get a job and it's a great job, they're not paying you.
Yeah.
You make scale 10 when you're working with George Clooney on Descendants.
Yeah.
And Alexander Payne. I mean, you're making, which is good money if you make it every week. But if you haven't worked in a year and you make scale 10, that $5,000 for the year doesn't go very far.
Right.
So it was this kind of crazy redirect of my life, and we changed everything. And I went back to teaching. So I was like, in the worst case scenario, I'll just do good work and I'll teach, and eventually maybe I'll get another shot. And along comes this movie called Descendants, where I walked in and I said to Alexander Payne, I'm never going to get this job. He's like, why do you say that? I'm like, look at me. I'm never going to be the guy that gets George Clooney's wife. He's like, well, why don't you, because the longer version of that story was like, I wasn't even supposed to be in the audition. They'd snuck me into the audition. And I found out that I got snuck into the audition as I was walking in. And I said to him, I was like, I'm never getting this job.
And he was just like, well, just try.
He's like, well, I was like, I have to go take my kids to this movie. Do you mind if we just do this fast so I can get out of here? He's like, yeah, great. And no audition. He's like, that's the best audition I've ever seen. I'm like, well, too bad I'm never going to get this job. He's like, well, why don't you leave? And like, 5 months later, right at my 40th birthday, I get this job.
And Chris Evans called you.
And Chris Evans like, you have to, yeah. It was a long rambling story. Sorry. But the idea
awesome.
was that, look, I was like, it's hard in this business to go all the way, to be an actor your whole life.
It seems like, though, and you've done, like Andy was just rattling off some of the credits you've had over the last couple of years, and they're among the most respected and beloved, critically beloved shows on television. It seems as though you've been a beneficiary of good dramatic, just good storytelling coming to these various new platforms, and also television ramping up dramatic storytelling in a way. And have you felt like the combination of like you kind of, like you said, returning to the work, and also there being slightly more opportunities for something like The Bridge, which ultimately did not get the run it should have gotten, but it got on the air in the first place, which was still cool. And something like Halt and something like Twin Peaks is different. But do you see what I'm saying? Like, has there been like a sea change in the industry that's coincided with like a bit of luck for you?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, yeah, it's funny. I mean, for sure, because I feel like I've done good work on shows that are cool shows.
Yeah.
I mean, Halt's a great show that nobody's really watching, unfortunately. But, I go back, and Bridge is I think the best work I've ever done. And I got a chance to work on it continually. I got great words for 2 years. I mean, I got 26 episodes of like great television.
And you got to play so many different notes,
Yeah, I got to do everything.
You got an arc, a huge arc, like a redemption arc.
Yeah.
And you got to, were you talking about Rush in that scene? Who are you talking about?
Yeah.
I mean, you got to do
I got to be funny, and I got to do these crazy, the opening sequence. I mean, the guy is supposed to die in episode 4.
Right.
And Elwood they just kept writing me back and like, well, we'll keep you around for a little while longer. In fact, they wrote a script of finale first season where I died.
Wow.
And he's like, just don't read the end. We're going to see what we can do.
Yeah, but it's also
magically came back.
It's interesting because you're talking about and thank you for telling us that story first of all, because I don't think that people understand what being an actor is.
No, it's super. And look, and I like to be at the front of that story, going, look, it's really hard. Like, if you don't work for a year and they pay you $5,000 for a great job that doesn't feed your kids in Southern California, they take half. I mean, it's it's a really and right now. It's worse than it has ever been for actors. Because there's great work.
Yeah, right.
Right. Amazon's not giving residuals.
Right.
And Amazon's like, we have Titus Welliver. We don't need you. So you're going to take it or leave it.
Right.
Supply and demand dictates that they can do that. And I'm not a guy that is in demand. So you're taking what you get. Now, look, I would rather bet on because I had the wherewithal to rejigger my life. To bring it down to a place where I can manage. I'm able, and my wife went back to work, and we try to continually live in this humble space. I can take that job.
Yeah.
But if it didn't have Scooby-Doo to live on, because I still do the voice of Shaggy now. If I didn't have, I had to do a big payday, which I'll never see again. But that payday, has helped me in my life. And the way we sort of took our house and basically almost bought our new house, and it's good. My life's manageable. But if I didn't have a manageable life, if I lived like a normal life, I would be gone.
Yeah.
I'd be in the middle of Iowa teaching which is great. I'm sure Iowa's a fantastic place, but I would be gone. Like so many actors are gone because you can't hold on. You can't make a living. You can't feed yourself.
Yeah, the amount you must have to work to sustain yourself, or the amount of the amount of luck you must need for those roles to hit. I was just like, because you were on Good Wife. You did do some network shows that were probably...
Good Wife is scale 10. Again, look, scale 10, for those of you listening, it's like, I think the scale right now is $3,900 for a week of work. But you pay 50% to the government because they're acting like you make that every week of your life. And then you pay 10% to your manager and 10% to your agent off the top.
Right.
So you basically make 35 cents to the dollar, which, if you're not working a lot, it's not a lot of money.
Yeah.
So, yes, you do Good Wife, which is a great show. And that's like one of those shows that's like, it's good to be on. You're building your career. You're trying to be relevant for a network to hire you later.
Yeah.
But I think what's amazing to think about in the scheme of this, in the scheme of your IMDb page, is the versatility, because you did the high profile thing.
Yeah.
You did, and to do a high profile thing, this is true in like for pop stars with like a pop song or a big movie star, you have to do like the one thing that people like. You have to do your catchphrase,
sure,
whatever, and you did it, and it worked, and you got paid from it, and you get to keep working from it. But you can also hit a dramatic moment, like we're talking about in Twin Peaks, which is in many ways the opposite of that, certainly in terms of pay. But you could hit that high too. But I keep coming back to the bridge, not because I wish it had been able to go on.
But it's funny, just real quick. So but I do think it's interesting that it kind of leaves me in the middle.
Well, no, but I was about to fill in the middle by saying on the bridge, you did something that I think is undervalued and incredibly hard, which is you played a character that people wanted to spend time with over a long period of time. There are actors who you want to spend an hour and a half with, and there are actors that you remember a little bit and that moment you spend with them. But there's a certain kind of performance that I think is rare and undervalued, and it's especially valuable in television, which is you want to spend time with them.
Yeah.
Right.
Every week you want to see them. And that is a different calibration, because if you're playing that character like Shaggy or like Bill Hastings,
Right.
that might not be an every week hang.
No, you don't
know
want to
what
hang
I mean?
with that dude.
That's a third skill set. So you
Right.
sort of have to have these different. You have to be very versatile to survive.
Yeah,
I guess
and
is what I'm saying.
But I will say that I don't think in Hollywood today versatility. I don't think they care. I really don't. I love all those execs out there, but they don't.
Because they can plug the hole.
They just
some other
want. They're trying to protect their job. They're trying to protect the bottom dollar. They want Twitter hits. They want somebody with great abs that they can put on the cover of Entertainment Weekly. I mean, I get it. They're all trying to make money. As an actor,
How are your abs?
they're terrible. I'm 47. This is not my specialty.
I was going to wrap up because we've been talking so much about your work. Are you watching anything right now that you've been particularly enamored by? Is there anything on?
Well, Handmaid's Tale is fantastic. I think that Moss gives the best performance around.
She's unreal.
She's unreal.
It's like a different. I'm interested to hear you say that as an actor, because you can reach those. You showed us in Twin Peaks. You can hit those places.
Yeah.
She just seems otherworldly because she's always in those places.
She's always. She's remarkable. That show's remarkable. I do think that, sort of with Twin Peaks being an example. I mean, they are allowing people. The good thing about the Hulus and the Amazons, like they're allowing you to make your show.
Yeah.
They're not sitting on you to be like, well, demographics say. I mean, they're giving license for people to make great art.
Yeah.
And I think that's a good example. We just started the OA, which I'm excited about. I'm a year behind on Lord of the Rings, on Game of Thrones. We're not a huge TV family.
Okay.
Not huge. I mean, I like it.
Final question for you.
Yeah.
Who killed
I don't want this to be a fun question. I want to talk about me longer and harder.
This is what we do here. Who killed Laura Palmer?
Bro, I don't even know who Laura Palmer is. I don't care.
Perfect.
She dead? Is she really dead?
Well, we thought so.
I mean, she's in that weird room with the red curtains and the music and the
backwards. You should just be reviewing the show every week.
I mean, I don't know what
being in it.
Yeah, I don't know who she is.
It's metaphysically, he's right.
He's right.
Who is she?
We don't know.
Who is she?
Here's what I'm going to say. You are welcome back anytime to talk about yourself or other shows. We'd love to have you come back.
Can we make this a 2-hour special, Matthew Lillard Bonanza?
we can do Lillard Bonanza.
That sounds miserable, actually. I gave you all my good juice.
You got it. We got it. Matthew Lillard, thank you so much for joining us, man. Okay, thank you so much to Matthew Lillard for being so generous with his time. This Thursday, no Andy, so we'll figure something out. Who knows?
Good luck.
Solo. The Chris monologues.
The Tom Hardy without the other guy.
Anything to tease? We got Talk the Thrones next Sunday, obviously, after the East Coast airing, just directly after scenes from next week. You can just go to twitter.com/ringer. We are very available there. Nothing else really to announce, right?
Nah, summertime.
We'll stick with it. I would recommend that folks check out two things. I mean, I was going to bring this up on Thursday, but two things. One, Ozark is not that bad.
Interesting.
I know that Allison Herman disagrees with me, but maybe we'll get into that. And if you are looking for a fun movie experience this coming week, Atomic Blonde is that shit.
Yeah?
Yeah, it's really, really, really cool.
I go to movies now.
Yeah.
Maybe I'll see it.
Atomic Blonde was a lot of fun. James McAvoy really just going for it.org. We'll be back on Thursday and then next Monday. Take care.
Great job, Redsky!
Today's episode of The Watch was brought to you by Spotify. Did you know that you can listen to this very podcast, The Watch, and others from the Ringer fam on Spotify? Yes! The streaming service that you know and love for music is also fully loaded with podcasts. Find The Watch in the podcast section within the Browse tab when you're using Spotify on mobile, or just search for The Watch in the app. While you're there, click to follow us and have new episodes delivered right into your Spotify library. Head to spotify.com/podcasts for more.